A good Friday morning, Mount Olive family and friends of Mount Olive, and those tuning in to watch another Friday's devotion. I appreciate each one of you who, as I always say, take the time to turn in or get online and watch these. We really appreciate each one of you. I want to thank Brother Sean for doing last Friday's devotion. I did Wednesday night service at the church, so I asked Brother Sean if he would mind doing the Friday devotion. He always does a very good job, so appreciate him. So let's get on. I'll try to share my screen here with you. So I have entitled, well, kind of a theme, oops, sorry, is victory. And this is from Brother Tommy's message Sunday. I thought he, as always, he does a very good job. And Brother Tommy, you don't need slides. You, for the PowerPoint, you do a very good job, without those. So talk about victory, and he made this statement. Brother TJ used part of it on Monday, but I'm going at it from a different angle. He said, sometimes we need to shout before the victory's there, and that's something that we really need to remember. I thought, when he said that, I thought, that's great advice for the day and time that we're living in. We as Christians, we cannot live defeated lives. If we do, then, our unsaved friends and neighbors will see that, and they'll say, well, you're just like me, why be a Christian? We're going to face trials and troubles and sickness and betrayals and losses because we live in a world that's beset by sin. But Jesus has given us the victory. Let's look at someone in the Bible who faced more than any of us has and claimed the victory. Paul the Apostle. How many of you thought I was going to say Jesus? But Paul, he faced things that you and I have never faced, and he's a good example for us to live by. In 2 Corinthians chapter 11, 24 through 27, Paul lists his suffering. He's not bragging about these. He just was going through some things with these false teachers and preachers who were coming in, and he says, okay, let's see, let's compare what's happened to you, what's happened to me. So he lists the things that's happened to him since he started sharing doing the work of the gospel. He said that he received 40 stripes less one 5 times. So 40 minus 1 is 395 or 39 times 5. So he received 195 stripes at different times. Said he was beaten with rods 3 times. He was stoned once. He was shipwrecked 3 times. He was in the sea for a day and a night. He said there were dangers in his journey. There was water perils in the river crossings and floods that he came across. There was trouble with bandits. There was perils of his own Jewish countrymen. There was perils by the heathen and the non-believers that he had to face. He said there was perils in the city. There was perils in the wilderness. There was perils in the sea. That he labored and toiled. Now, this is verse 27. If you look at that, this weariness and painfulness is better translated labored and toiled, because Paul, as you know, he was a tent maker, and sometimes Paul had to work for a living to have the money for his needs and continue on his work. In watchings often, sometimes there was sleeplessness and insomnia. Because of all these things that were happening to him, plus also, caring for the churches and what all that they were going through. That word had gotten back to him. Many nights in prayer, for these churches and his fellow believers that, that were facing persecution. He said he was in hunger and he thirst in fasting. Sometimes, sometimes fastings, are for closer to God, but sometimes, fastings, he would go hungry not to be a burden on others, that didn't have enough to give him. So he would fast and not ask of them. Cold and naked, he would go without an adequate shelter and clothing. And that's quite an impressive list of things that Paul went through to spread the gospel and the love of Jesus Christ. And, and some of us, we won't spread the gospel and love of Jesus Christ by helping at VBS. But that's a devotion for another day. And if I could put up an LOL or a smiley face, I'd do that. But I don't know how to do it on this. So, but that's true. Sometimes, in churches and have trouble even finding teachers for vacation Bible school, and but we say we want to spread the word of the gospel, and we love Jesus. So, but that's for another day. So now this brings us to chapter 12, and this is where today's devotion begins. All this other was just a warm up for what we're going through. Now, Paul begins chapter 12, as some of you know who've read it. It's talking about a man, or that being Paul, who was caught up into the third heaven and who heard things that he was not permitted to tell. Now, Paul, he could glory in what happened to him, but God chose to keep him humble, and that's in 2 Corinthians 12, verses 7 through 10. He talks about this, and he said, "And lest I should be exalted above measure, through the abundance of these of the revelations, there was given to me a thorn in the flesh, the messenger of Satan to buffet me, lest I should be exalted above measure." And then verse 8 says, "And for this thing, this thorn in the flesh that he had, he said, I besought the Lord thrice that it might depart from me." Now, I'm going to give you a Greek word study, so be ready for it. I haven't gave you one in quite a while. It's concerning the word besought. We think of this, Paul just, he went to the Lord and he said, "Lord, I've got this thorn in the flesh, just take it from me." And, the Lord didn't. And he goes to him again and he says, "You didn't take it away that time, so take it away now." But it didn't happen like that. This besought is the word that's parakaleho. It means to invoke by imploring, to beg, entreat, or beseech. So, Paul, we don't know what that thorn was, and there's been a lot of speculation about it, but it was very worrisome to Paul, and it interfered with his gospel work. So he earnestly prayed to God 3 times to remove it from him. So we'll go back to what Tommy said Sunday, shout before the victory is there. So Paul had asked God. That's the shout before. And in the next verses, he begins to receive the victory. When Paul prayed, he wasn't a victory shout. It was a shout to imploring God, asking God, begging God to remove this from him. But little did Paul know that this thorn in the flesh, God had given him for a reason. And in verse 9, it says, "And he said unto me, My grace is sufficient for thee, for my strength is made perfect in weakness." And then Paul says, "Most gladly, therefore, will I rather glory in my infirmities, that the power of Christ may rest upon me." So, God told him, he said, "My grace," God said, "My grace is enough for you." No matter what we go through, God's grace is sufficient for us, is enough for us. And God's strength is made perfect in my weakness. When I try to do things and get out of things and I just make them worse. Not realize that, this is my weakness, that if I would just turn it over to God, his strength is made perfect in weakness. And Paul goes on to say, he said, "Gladly, therefore, I will glory in my infirmities." So in this thorn in the flesh, he's going to glory that the power of Christ will rest upon him. And in verse 10, he says, and this is where he gets his victory. He says, therefore, I take pleasure in infirmities, in reproaches, in necessities, in persecutions, in distresses for Christ's sake. For when I am weak, then I am strong. Paul says, I take pleasure in the stripes, in the beatings, in the shipwreck. That whole list that I went over with you previously, God was there with him through every one of those things he went through. Sometimes we still have to go through things, but God is always there with us. He never leaves us. He never forsakes us. And this is the victory. When I am weak in my trials and troubles, in my sickness, in my betrayals, in my losses, all that I go through, I am strong through Jesus Christ, and I have the victory. I hope you have enjoyed this Friday's devotion. I hope you will think about what I said, and no matter what you're going through, and if you are going through something, and I don't know about it, I pray for you. You pray for me. That God's grace is sufficient for us, and that this thing that we're going through will be stronger on the other end. God's grace will strengthen us, and we'll be made perfect, through it. So you have a good rest of the weekend. Hope to see you in church on Sunday. If you don't have a church and you're looking for one, we welcome you to Mount Olive, and you're welcome anytime. So hope to see you Sunday. Thanks for joining.